I want to give a special shout out to all my patrons, my Bibliosprand, Bibliohowlers, and Bibliomancers. Thank you so much for supporting my hobby and passion even more. It means so much to me. Hi everyone, Patrick here. Today's video will be the 6th episode of SFF Spotlight. Science Fiction and Fantasy Spotlight is where I will give spotlight to new book news, new special edition being announced, and new noteworthy release in the science fiction and fantasy genre, specifically on adult fantasy. And I know that it hasn't been 2 weeks since my previous episode of SFF Spotlight, but I already have so many spotlight. I want to talk about more than 20 spotlight already, so I thought I might as well post the video today. So yeah, let's get started immediately, and the first topic that I want to talk about is Stormlight Archive Book 5 by Brandon Sanderson is almost assuredly being delayed to 2024 instead of being released in 2023. Sanderson mentioned that although his secret projects, the 4 secret projects of his Kickstarter, is partly responsible of this delay, but the main reason why the Stormlight Archive Book 5 is being delayed is mainly because of movie and television stuff that he cannot say yet. So I think this is good news. Plus, this will actually lighten my burden to actually read so many Brandon Sanderson's books next year, because originally I planned to read the entire Skyward, and then I plan to read 4 the secret projects, and also I plan to read the entire Stormlight Archive within 2023, which makes that more than 10 books. Yeah, that's more than 10 books by Brandon Sanderson I was going to read next year. But with Stormlight Archive being delayed to 2024, I will be reading Skyward series and also the 4 secret projects next year, moving my reread of the entire Stormlight Archive into 2024 instead. So this is good news for me, and also hopefully this will give Brandon Sanderson more time to actually polish the 5th book of Stormlight Archive, because this is the conclusion to Stormlight Archive Part 1 and he has to do it right. And speaking of Brandon Sanderson, the next news is about Secret History, the novella in Mistborn universe by Brandon Sanderson, getting a new cover art done by Howard Lyon. This new edition of Secret History will be released this September, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, Tor Books has never released their own edition for Secret History. So yeah, I think this is good news for all of you who wants to get Secret History in US. And next, moving on from Brandon Sanderson stuff, let's talk about George R.R. Martin's Winds of Winter. I'm not going to talk about this in details, but basically George R.R. Martin talked about how being a gardener rather than an architecture type of writer affect his writing speed a lot. And also he mentioned how the ending of his books, which we don't know when he will get there, will most likely be different from the ending of the TV show adaptation. I don't think this is a surprise. I think we all know that the details of the ending will be different, even if some things are the same. It is a long post on his blog, and I think it is really well written. I don't know about you, but I'm still hopeful that we will get Winds of Winter someday. On his blog, he also mentioned this. One thing I can say, in general enough terms that I will not be spoiling anything, not all of the characters who survive until the end of Game of Thrones, the TV show, will survive until the end of A Song of Ice and Fire. And not all of the characters who died on Game of Thrones will die in A Song of Ice and Fire. Some will, sure, of course, maybe most, but definitely not all. Of course, I could change my mind again next week with the next chapter I write. That's gardening. And the ending, you will need to wait until I get there. Some things will be the same, a lot will not. So yeah, it is a long post, but that's pretty much the main point of the blog post. I highly recommend you to check it out on your own. And speaking of TV show adaptation, another fantasy series that I've read just received an update on the status of its TV show adaptation, and this is for Raven Shadow by Anthony Ryan. The TV show adaptation will be adapted by Lone Wolf Pictures, and the whole spiel, Stephen McDonald Lone Wolf Pictures has acquired rights to Anthony Ryan's Raven Shadow fantasy book franchise to develop into a television series. Lone Wolf is partnering on the project with Paul Teletji and Steven Teletji, the whole spiel. The TV show adaptation is tentatively titled Queen of Fire, which is the title of the 3rd book in Raven Shadow Trilogy. The TV series will feature the legends, worlds, and characters of the Raven Shadow book trilogy, its sequel, the Raven's Blade duology, and collections of Raven Shadow short stories written by Ryan. Anthony Ryan himself said that, "I am thrilled with the production's fresh, original, and expansive vision for adapting my books and stories for global screen audience and core fans alike," said Anthony Ryan. "It is an exciting opportunity to collaborate closely with the creative team in bringing my universe and characters to life on screen." So I'm quite hopeful about this. I think I mentioned this so many times already that Bloodsong, the first book in Raven Shadow, is one of my favorite books of all time. And I'm quite curious to see how they will adapt the entire trilogy and also Ravensblade duology into TV show. But again, TV show adaptation, especially with fantasy books, usually, well, let's just say that it often doesn't come through, so let's just keep our fingers crossed on this one. And next we have news on Red Rising Saga Book 6, which Pierce Brown said will be announced next Friday on the 22nd of July. I talked about this in my first episode of SFF Spotlight that Pierce Brown mentioned that he will be talking about Red Rising related news on July. So yeah, this is it. I don't know whether he will only talk about Book 6 or not, but I have a feeling that he will talk about something more than Book 6, not just Book 6 release date or something. But it is about time to get a release date for Book 6, and I am so looking forward to reading through the Red Rising Saga from the beginning again. And it's not only Pierce Brown that announced there will be a continuation to his work, but Josiah Bancroft also just did an anticipated release date for his newest book, The Hexologist, and this is from his newsletter. This summer, I have begun working on the second entry in my new Hexologist series. The first book, By the Light of the Lost, is presently with my editor. The anticipated date for its release is November 2023, which feels like forever away, I know, but the plan is to release the sequels annually thereafter. So once the ball starts rolling, it will keep rolling for a while. Wrapping up one series and starting another is both thrilling and unnerving. It's admittedly stressful to cast off from familiar shores and plow into uncharted waters. To look back is to finally glimpse the scope of what was conquered. To gaze forward is to confront the uncertainty of what is to come. This new undertaking will naturally be judged by the metric of the last adventure, which benefited in the making from the strut over relative youth and enjoys new retrospection flattering patina. But what lies ahead? A maelstrom of sub-parody, the cruel silence of banality, the craggy shoals of mediocrity. It is a harrowing voyage, but one I am very much enjoying. The neighboring image is Ian Leino's fabulous vision for the cover, which we hope Orbit will agree to use. I think many of you know that I'm a fan of the books of Babel until I've read the final book, The Fall of Babel, which in my opinion is indeed the fall of the books of Babel. But you know what? I will keep my fingers crossed that The Hexologist will be an even better series. I mean, come on, I really love Josiah Bancroft's prose, and it is shown how good he is at writing just from his newsletter. And after that, before we move on to talk about special editions, let's talk about a debut novel that was just announced. This is For Some Desperate Glory by Emily Tesh, which will be a duology, and the cover art is done by Cynthia Sheppard. The release date is the 4th of April 2023. Tor.com Publishing is thrilled to announce that Roxy Chen has acquired World Fantasy Award winner Emily Tesh's debut novel, Some Desperate Glory. Pitched as Vorko Zigan meets Gideon the Ninth, set in the world inspired by Mass Effect, in which Keir, a young soldier of Gaia Station, trains to avenge the murder of Earth at the hands of an all-powerful, reality-shaping alien weapon before discovering she might have to take everything into her own hands. And this is what the author Emily Tesh has to say. Some Desperate Glory is the most ambitious book I have ever written. It is an intensely character-driven story about survival and escape and growth. A story that begins in a very dark place in order to find a way out. The villain of Keir's journey is Keir herself, and I am thrilled to be working again with Roxy Chen and Tor.com Publishing to share her bad adventures with the world. So I think this sounds kind of promising. I am a fan of Gideon the Ninth, but at the same time, I'm also not a fan of Harrow the Ninth. So we'll see how this goes when we get to it, but the cover art looks amazing, and I am a huge fan of Mass Effect, so that is a plus. Now let's talk about special editions, because in the past 10 days, there are so many special editions announced, and the first one, and probably one of the one that I'm looking forward to the most, it is Malice by John Gwynne. I actually already talked about The Faithful and the Fallen special edition being acquired by Grim Oak Press in, I think, SFF Spotlight episode 4. I know this post is going to generate a lot of excitement. Hell, I'm excited. Yes, we will be producing beautiful editions of John Gwynne's work, beginning with Malice. He has become a fan-favorite fantasy writer these last few years, and it's a great fun watching his readership exponentially grow. He published a short story in my anthology Unfeathered 3, and we have stayed in contact since. I always knew this day would come, and the result would be a beautiful edition of Malice and its sequels. John wasn't published in hardcover in the United States when he debuted, leaving a big hole in people's collections, and numerous bibliophiles have requested his work to be given the Grim Oak treatment. I decided it was time to remedy that. Marcus Whinney, who produced the covers on John's newest books, has joined Grim Oak to produce wraparound covers and one full-color signature page per book. Sadly, no interiors on this as Marcus is quite busy. Still, I think our editions will please great many collector and reader. As always, I will leave the link to the poll in the description down below, but for now, my thoughts on this is that I am excited that John Gwynne, especially The Faithful and the Fallen, is finally getting a special edition in the United States. Marcus Whinney is a terrific artist. I think his artwork on The Shadow of the Gods and The Hunger of the Gods are absolutely amazing, and let's see. I am looking forward to see what he will come up with for Malice. And the next special edition I'm going to talk about is about Sabriel by Garth. This is the Daphne Press edition, which I have talked about in, again, one of my SFF Spotlight, but due to problem issue with their website, Daphne Press has decided to move the pre-order date for, well, Sabriel. The new pre-order date will take place on the 20th of July, so yeah, make sure to mark your date. This will be a general sale. There will be no pre-sale for active subscribers. This edition will be limited to 2,000 signed and numbered copies, and it is priced at £75 plus shipping and also tax. I haven't read all Kingdom series yet, but I think the new cover art by Tommy Arnold is looking so good. I mean, it's Tommy Arnold. He never fails. And for those of you who don't know, Daphne Press is actually a branch of Illumicrate, and Illumicrate just announced they will be releasing a new edition for Oleander's Sword by Tasha Suri. This is the second book in the Burning Kingdoms, which is the sequel to the Jasmine Throne, and this is how the edition looks. I think the cover art to Oleander's Sword looks really great, and the cover artist Micah Epstein. I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce the name, but I think he's a super artist, and I think this cover art looks really good. And the next three special editions I'm going to mention, all three of them will be on the same book, and it is for Babel by R.F. Kuang. I'm going to leave the link to each special edition of Babel on the description down below, but basically Illumicrate just announced that Babel will be their book of the month in the month of August, which means that I will be doing an unboxing of Babel on this channel. I am once again honored to receive the blessing of being a rep for Illumicrate once again this quarter. And after Illumicrate, Fairy Loot just announced they also will be doing a special edition titled Arcane History, which obviously we all know is Babel by R.F. Kuang, this August as well. And the last edition for Babel recently announced is by Fox and Wit Publishing. I haven't heard about Fox and Wit before I saw the announcement for the edition of Babel, and I think this is the only one so far that has a unique cover art to Babel, and I think this one looks amazing. Look at this cover art. I think the cover artist Christin Engelberth did such an amazing job with this cover art, and if you have read the book, you will notice so much amazing details on the cover art. Seriously, it is so good. Unfortunately, at the moment, Fox and Wit doesn't ship their edition of Babel to international readers because they're sold out already, but I heard that they will restock it. So yeah, I know that's a lot of special edition for Babel, but speaking of a lot of special edition, let's talk about the champion, and it is Empire of the Vampire by J. Kristoff. Seriously, this book, I think within a year, it hasn't even been a year, it already has more than 20 special editions. That's including the 5 advanced reading copies for the book. So it is insane. I think within 3 years, this will actually top The Lord of the Rings. But you know what? This new Empire of the Vampire Deluxe Illustrated Edition will be coming this October. I haven't read this book yet, but I did plan to read this October. So I don't know whether I will get this book or not. But if I'm not mistaken, other than the cover art, there will be no new content inside this edition. But the one enhancement that this edition has is that all the interior artworks inside this book by Bon Orthwick will be receiving a full color treatment. So yes, every artwork inside this book, which is a lot by the way, all of them will be fully colored. So that's something impressive. I don't know whether I will be spending my money on this yet because I haven't read the book. But if I have read the book and I loved it so much, then yes, probably I will get it. Even though I know that there will be another new edition being announced probably next month or next year for Empire of the Vampire. And the next 2 special editions I'm going to talk about will be by The Broken Binding, and the first one is the Licanius Trilogy. Yes, the Licanius Trilogy by James Islington is finally getting the Broken Binding treatment, and this will be for the month of September until November this year, which makes me so happy because, as I constantly said, the Licanius trilogy is one of the best trilogy that I've read, and the Broken Binding has mentioned that the edition will be signed and numbered. It will contain 4 color design and pages, foils on front, back, and spine. The edition also comes with a block spray edges and an exclusive bookmark. I definitely look forward to receiving this trilogy so much because, again, as I said, this is one of the best trilogy that I've read. And although I already own a hardcover for the 3rd book, The Light of All That Falls, I don't have a hardcover for the first 2 books, The Shadow of What Was Lost and also An Echo of Things to Come. And the next special edition by the Broken Binding is on the first binding. Yes, the first book in the Tales of Tremaine. We finally have a look on this edition, and I think it looks amazing, even better than the Goldsboro edition. This edition will be signed, dated, and numbered and limited to 1,000 copies, and it will have block spray edges, alternative colored boards, design and pages, and a passage down the spine. The edition will cost £25 per copy, and the pre-sale will take place on the 30th of July, 12 p.m. BST, and the general sale will take place on the 31st of July. So this edition of the first binding is not exclusive to the subscribers of the Broken Binding. You can actually get it even if you're not subscribed to the Broken Binding. So yeah, make sure to get your hands on it. And the last special edition I'm going to talk about today is about Dune. So yeah, the 2nd book and the 3rd book of Dune is getting a special edition similar to the first book, Dune. This new edition for Dune Messiah and Children of Dune will receive a new cover art done by Matt Griffin. This will be a deluxe edition from Ace Books, which will be published on the 4th of April 2023. And this will also come with a box set. So if you miss your chance of getting the first book, the deluxe edition of the first book, this is your chance of getting all 3 together in one. And that's it for special edition. Let's talk a bit about self-published fantasy books. The Sword of Kaigen by M.L. Wong recently reached 2,000 reviews on Amazon, which is amazing. And now, for the entirety of the month of July, The Sword of Kaigen will be discounted. Yeah, make sure to get it because this, even to this day, is still my favorite standalone books of all time, and it's also my favorite self-published fantasy books of all time. So if you haven't read The Sword of Kaigen and you want to get it, this is your chance. And the next news is about Mage Errant by John Bierce. John Bierce just announced the new cover art to the 2nd book in the series, Jewel of the Endless Earth, and just like the first book, Into the Labyrinth, it is getting a new cover treatment done by Aaron McConnell and Lee Moyer. I haven't read Mage Errant yet, but I've heard a lot of great things about it. Some even said that Mage Errant is actually better than Cradle, so I look forward to reading it. I think the 7th book will be the last book of the series, so there is only 1 book left. But either way, I think the new cover art looks absolutely amazing, and I look forward to seeing the new cover art to the 3rd and 4th book as well, because the cover art, the cover artist and the cover designer has done their work for book 1, book 2, book 5, and book 6. And the next news is that Calcade, the author behind King's Dark Tidings, just announced the much anticipated hardcover editions for the King's Dark Tidings series are releasing this month and the next. So Mage of No Renown, the King's Dark Tidings prequel featuring Weston, is available now in all formats. Then Free the Darkness, King's Dark Tidings Book 1, the hardcover is now available to pre-order. As for the remaining books in the series, this is the release date for their hardcover. Reign of Madness will be on July 26th, Legends of Anne will be on August 9th, Kingdoms on Chaos will be on August 23rd, and finally, Dragons and Demons, which also is the 5th book in the series, which has never been released before, will be released on September 6th. So if you're a fan of King's Dark Tidings, I think this is great news for all of you. And again, I haven't read this series yet. I don't know when I will get to it, but this is something that I will be keeping on my radar for sure. And the next 2 things I want to spotlight, both of them are self-published fantasy Kickstarter. The first one is The Last Ranger by J.D.L. Rosser with a cover art by Felix Ortiz. The Kickstarter for this one will end on the 25th of July, and I will leave the link to the Kickstarter on the description down below. And also another Kickstarter I want to mention is for The Guild of Magic by John Arba. This is the 2nd book in his epic urban fantasy series, which is the sequel to The Guild of Token. This one also featured the cover art by Felix Ortiz, and the design is done by Sean King. If you're into Kickstarter projects for self-published fantasy hardcovers, make sure to check these out because they are looking good. And finally, to close this episode of SFF Spotlight, I want to mention 3 noteworthy releases being released on July 12th. All of them. So the first one is Upgrade by Blake Crouch. So I am so looking forward to reading this one, and I am a fan of dark matter and also recursion, and I definitely will be reading Upgrade, and it's great to hear that this book is out now. Blake Crouch, I think, is a great standalone sci-fi writer. And another book recently released is Titan Hoppers by Rob J. Hayes. I haven't read this one, but I have read 5 books by Rob J. Hayes and I enjoyed them all. And I think this first book in his Progression Fantasy series, or Progression Science Fantasy, I think it will be great as well. Rob has mentioned that Titan Hoppers will be suitable for those who love reading Cradle and Iron Prince. So yeah, if you love reading Progression Science Fantasy, make sure to check it out. And finally, the last noteworthy release and also the last topic I want to talk about is Into the Narrowdark by Tad Williams. So yeah, this is the 3rd book in the Last King of Boston art series and it is out now. Yeah, I just rant about this cover in my previous video. So yeah, but you know, I actually got the book not in physical format but in ebooks format because I don't like the cover change. But you know what? Tad Williams, his entire Austen art saga is a huge priority for me to read next year, so I thought I might as well get it now. And I look forward to reading the entire series next year. So you will hear me talking about Tad Williams books, maybe a lot next year. Especially because if all things goes according to plan, the last book, Navigator Children, will indeed be released in 2023. So if you're a fan of Tad Williams and Austen art saga, well, now you know that Into the Narrowdark is out. That's it for today's SFF Spotlight video. As I mentioned, there is a lot of topics to cover and I actually already exclude some topic from today's episode of SFF Spotlight. So many news are being announced in the past 10 days already. So yeah, do let me know your thoughts on the topics I just mentioned, which one excites you the most, and the next episode of SFF Spotlight will be posted 2 weeks from today. As always, thank you so much for watching and thank you for your support. Bye bye. Lastly, I want to say thank you so much once again to all my patrons who keep on supporting me.